So today we're gonna have it with a video. We're gonna go through an article about Jordan Peterson and whether he is Stoic or he is not Stoic, which is a very interesting article, at least at my point of view, which also gives pretty good insights into the worldviews of Jordan Peterson and, you know, the criticism and whatnot. Even though I do want to point out this is a very criticizing article, so the author of this article definitely is not a fan of Jordan Peterson. You know, that's really important to point out at my point of view. Where have I stopped? Well, I'm just gonna go ahead there. Or should I have a clean up? Peterson's advice plays into one of the worst stereotypes about Stoicism, that it is an inward-looking, quietist philosophy, but it is not. The virtue of justice requires us to try to change things for the better for everyone. Historical examples like those of Cato the Younger, as well as recent ones like Nelson Mandela, who was inspired by Marcus' meditations, are obvious pointers. When Peterson tells us that self-improvement is more important than any possible political action, he is simply wrong. For Stoicism, the two go hand in hand. We improve ourselves as we improve the world, and vice versa. Cosmopolitanism, not egoism. Walch then explains, or then claims, that another similarity between Peterson and the Stoics is that they both tell us to overcome obstacles by way of a strong mindset and to be courageous. And isn't endurance a Stoic attribute? Is courage not a Stoic attribute? Yes, but Stoicism believes in the unity of virtue, which means that one simply cannot talk about courage as isolated or distinct from justice and prudence and temperance. But as we have just seen, there is little if any talk of justice in a Stoic sense in Peterson. Being courageous for a Stoic doesn't just mean to pick up your damn suffering and bear it, as Peterson puts it, which is, by the way, a quote, or was a quote. That's yet another false stereotype about Stoicism, the stiff upper lip caricature. We are supposed to endure because it is the virtuous thing to do in order to be able to help others, not to show ourselves just how tough and manly we are. Speaking of manly, Peterson is very popular in the man's right movement. These are people that are appropriating a distorted view of Stoicism, as they love to point out that virtue comes from the Latin vir, so V-I-R, meaning man. They seem to forget two other crucial bits of information. First, that vir was the Latin translation of the Greek arete, so A-R-E-T-E, which simply means excellence and is not limited to man. Second, as I have already pointed out, that the Stoic virtues are a package. One is not virtuous if one is courageous, but lacks justice, temperance, or prudence. Peterson does say a number of fairly sensible things, like if a lot of human beings have done something terrible, you can be sure that being a human being, that you're capable of it. What? If a lot of human beings have done something terrible, you can be sure that being a human being, that you're capable of it. Is this grammatically right? I don't think so. Anyway, we know what he means. Had you been there in Nazi Germany, the probability that you would have played a role and that wouldn't have been a positive one is extraordinarily high, which is a quote, by the way. Indeed, but this is far from an original concept. It's what philosopher Thomas Nagel, I think, famously described as moral luck in a classic paper published back in 1979, and of which Peterson seems to be entirely unaware. Walch praises Peterson. By the way, Walch is the author of another article, and this article is a response to the other article, quite. Walch praises Peterson for questioning popular opinions, again, drawing an analogy with the Stoics in this respect. But questioning popular opinions is not an intrinsic good. It depends on which opinions one is criticizing and why. And here we come to the infamous case that actually catapulted Peterson to fame. His public criticism of Canada's Bill C-16 because of its stultifying political correctness. The bill added gender expression and identity to the list of criteria. One cannot be discriminated by in accordance to the Canadian Human Rights Act. Peterson claimed that C-16 would compel him to use a student's preferred gender pronoun or face criminal prosecution. This is simply and utterly false. Here is the full text of the bill so you can check for yourself. What about Peterson's cool head in the face of hostile and certainly unprofessional questioning by the host of a famous Channel 4 interview that went viral, thus further increasing his fame? Good for him, but as Don Robertson often remarks, that's Stoicism, not Stoicism. So that's Stoicism as a verb, and it's not Stoicism as the subject. You're having an uppercase S instead of the lowercase s of the verb. It's always commendable not to lose one's temper, but this is not. I think it's actually commendable, isn't it? Not to lose one's temper, but this is not a philosophical position, it's just common sense. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's common sense, and I just really hate the word common sense, because what is common sense, Could you explain that to me? Could you say that something is common sense? Which I think is, well, incredibly important to keep in mind. Anyway. Weckler is somewhat regretful that Peterson initially rejected the men going their own way, which is MGTOW, movement, only belatedly agreeing that they have a point in wanting nothing to do with relationships and marriage because, society and the law are so unfair to men these days. Setting aside that it is entirely ludicrous to even suggest that women in contemporary society are unjustly preferred over men. I guess that's why there is still so much violence against women. Pay inequality, discrimination when it comes to hiring and promotion, etc., 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 which is sarcastic, by the way. It is most certainly unstoic to want to create divisions from other human beings. Every Stoic we know of has emphasized the importance of relationships, and Seneca has gone so far as suggesting that marriage, or a committed relationship in modern terms, is a major occasion to become more virtuous and to help other human beings to do the same. And by the way, it is something that I've, back in my relationship that I had, I've seen that. I've clearly seen that. And I've also felt it. I felt like being a better person just because I was able to do good on a daily basis. Quite as dumb or as strange as it might sound, but it's the case, or it's been the case. There are a number of other decidedly unstoic aspects of Peterson's opinions, like his strange idea that conversation is made possible with men, but impossible with crazy quote-unquote women, by the always present threat of violence. And there is a quote: "I know how to stand up to a man who's unfairly trespassing against me, and the reason I know that is because the parameters for my resistance are quite well defined, which is we talk, we argue, we push, and then it becomes physical. If we move beyond the boundaries of civil discourse, we know what the next step is. That's forbidden in discourse with women, and so I don't think that man can control crazy women. There is no step forward that you can take under those circumstances, because if the man is offensive enough and crazy enough, the reaction becomes physical right away, or at least the threat is there." But by the way, it is something that, no, I'm not gonna say it. Because things that shouldn't be said, at least not in the way as I've had it in my mind, so I need to verbalize it in a different way, should not be said, which is, by the way, also something Stoic. If you're about to say something that is not benefiting anybody, what the fuck should you say it? What's the point of that? So yeah, so what sort of cardial virtue, I wonder, is Peterson deploying here? The Stoics were great logicians. They believed that one has to make careful arguments based on empirical evidence in order to arrive at the best judgment a human being can muster. And arriving at good judgments is the whole point of one of Epictetus' 3 discipline. The discipline of assent. Here, too, Peterson fails miserably. I mentioned above his reliance on mythology, which he takes from Jung. one interviewer finally asked him why people should believe in myth. Here is his response. Longer transcript in the article by Robinson linked below. So there's the short version of it. Well, what are you going to take seriously then? You're going to take nothing seriously. Well, good luck with that, because serious things are coming your way. If you're not prepared for them by an equal metaphysical seriousness, they will flatten you. So the interviewer finally asked him why people should believe in myth. So, well, what are you going to take seriously then? You're going to take nothing seriously. Well, I don't understand the full point, so I do think that there's more to it. I mean, why should I believe in myth? And then the answer being like, okay, if you're not taking myths seriously, then you're not gonna take anything seriously. So the problem there might also be that what is the definition of a myth? You know, maybe the definition in Peterson's head is a different one than in the questioner's head, if you know what I mean, or mind. This is an egregious example of really, really bad reasoning. Peterson is committing not one but two logical fallacies that I train my students to spot and avoid. First, the idea that if one does not take myths seriously, then one does not take anything seriously is an obvious non sequitur. sequitur. It simply does not follow. Second, the suggestion that serious things are coming, which serious things, by the way, is red herring distraction. What? Is a red herring distraction. Sure, serious things may be coming, for example, financial collapse, environmental catastrophe, nuclear war, but that has nothing at all to do with whether it is sensible for people to take myths seriously or not. But at least, says Wackler, Peterson rails against the damn postmodernists. Surely the Stoics would agree, as they battled the postmodernists of their time, the academic skeptics. As a scientist and philosopher, I am no fan of postmodernism. See chapters 10 and 11 of my nonsense on stilts. But here is a pretty good example of postmodernist obfuscatory language. So let's see if you can guess the author. And there's a long quote, I guess. Procedural knowledge generated in the course of heroic behavior is not organized and integrated within the group and the individual as a consequence of simple accumulation. Procedure A, appropriate in situation 1, and procedure B, appropriate in situation 2, may clash in mutual violent opposition in situation 3. Under such circumstances, intrapsychic or interpersonal conflict necessarily emerges. When such antagonism arises, moral revolution becomes necessary. As a consequence of such revolution, behavioral options are brutally rank-ordered, or less frequently, entire moral systems are devastated, reorganized, and replaced. This organization and reorganization occurs as a consequence of quote-unquote war, in its concrete, abstract, intrapsychic, and interpersonal variants. In the most basic case, an individual is rendered subject to an intolerable conflict as a consequence of the perceived effective intraphysic sphere. Such conflict often emerges when attainment of what is desired presently necessarily interferes with attainment of what is desired, or or avoidance of what is feared in the future. Permanent satisfactory resolution of such conflict between temptation and moral purity, quote-unquote, for example, requires the construction of an abstract moral system powerful enough to allow what an occurrence signifies for the future to govern reaction to what it signifies now. Even that construction, however, is necessarily incomplete when considered only as intrapsychic phenomena. The individual, once capable of coherently integrating competing motivational demands in the private sphere, nonetheless remains destined for conflict with the other. In the course of the inevitable transformations of personal experiments, this means that the person who has come to terms with him or herself, at least in principle, is still subject to the effective dysregulation inevitably produced by interpersonal interaction. It is also the case that such subjugation is actually indicative of insufficient intra-psychic organization, as many basic quote-unquote needs can only be satisfied through the cooperation of others. It's from Peterson Maps of Meaning in a section entitled The Great Father, and as far as I can see, and I looked hard, there is no meaning in the above. If you think you can do better, by all means, please translate into English. Could easily have been produced by the online postmodern generator. How is procedural knowledge generated by heroic behavior? What on earth is intra-psychic conflict? Why does all of that necessitate moral revolution? What does it mean to brutally rank order behavioral options as opposed to nicely rank order? Which behavioral options? Why is war in scare quotes? How can it be both concrete and abstract? Are outcomes apprehended? By whom? Why is moral purity in scare quotes? Oh, no, wait. Now intraphysic is in quotes too, because it means something different from intraphysic. What? Intraphysic without quotes? Question mark. What does it mean to be subjective to affective dysregulation? And now even even needs is in scare quotes. Oh, and phenomena is plural, not singular. Finally, the Stoics practiced humility because we are all unwise, always making mistakes, every one of us metaphorically drowning because we still have not gotten to the surface where the sage dwells. Not so Peterson, who is absolutely convinced of the immense value of his discoveries. In a letter to his father included in the Maps of Meaning, he writes, I don't know that, but I think I've discovered something that no one else has any idea about, and I'm not sure I can do it justice. Its scope is so broad that I can see only parts of it clearly at one time, and it's exceedingly difficult to set down comprehensively in writing. Yeah, I think that I'm going to end the episode there. I do believe that I'm going to go through another article by the How to Be a Stoic website, since I really like the author and believe that, you know, sometimes it's not as fluent as I'd like it to be. And I mean, this could definitely differentiate someone that apparently is a teacher, probably at some university, from somebody that is an author and is writing, you know, maybe also articles, maybe literature, so scientific literature, whatever. But yeah, anyway, amazing article. Gonna see you the next time. Bye-bye.